All right, now we're going to talk about how to take all of this data and make it a little more clinically relevant. So we're going to talk about PMS. PMS is actually how I started doing all of this, because I figured out really fast that if I didn't get my own under control, nobody was going to work for me for more than 3 months. Yeah, I didn't notice it when I was a resident, because we were all that way. Just remember, you're going to treat upstream. Don't worry about the details of down in the weeds down here. When it comes to estrogen, because PMS is an estrogen dominant situation, these are all the different points of leverage that we can use. So you can keep all of those in mind as possible places to go. And some of this is going to be a little bit of repetition already, but I want you to think of it in terms of like an actual person. So if we want to help her get rid of the estrogen dominance, help her lose fat. I like to say it that way because I don't want them to just lose weight, because depending on how they do it, they may be losing muscle. So I mentioned to them that I want you to lose fat. Get rid of endocrine disruptors if at all possible, have her reduce her alcohol, and be a little careful with coffee. A small amount is okay, large amount can be an issue. Reduce the inflammation, and this is primarily about how is she eating, and also to some extent her stress. And then reduce aromatization. We've talked about that already. Here's where plants come in really well. Tea is a great aromatase inhibitor, so it doesn't matter if it's white, green, or black. They all work. Lignans, great aromatase inhibitors. Here are great dietary sources of lignans. Easy to eat, right? Cashews and flax and chickpeas. I mean, these are all things that are easy to get into your diet. You can make a killer smoothie in the morning with flax and all these other things, and she can just get a bunch of stuff covered all at once. And when I make my smoothies every day, I know that green tea is good for me, and I would really rather drink coffee. So green tea is what I use for the liquid in my smoothies. I make up a batch once a week, enough for the week, and just store it in the refrigerator. A comment about dairy. This is the only slide. Just think of dairy as a source of exogenous estrogens, because unless it is raw and organic, this cow was fed all kinds of hormones. And even if it's from a cow who wasn't fed anything, just by nature, there's hormones in the milk, because the milk is designed to grow baby cows. So keep that in mind. Not saying that dairy is horrible, but if that's her main source of protein, for instance, or if it's her comfort food, you may want to take that into consideration. So to improve the luteal phase dysfunction part of PMS, healthy fats, adequate calories, the yo-yo diets are going to be a really big problem with luteal phase dysfunction. Treat upstream, so deal with the cortisol steal. And remember, look at the thyroid, because thyroid hormones have to stimulate LH and HCG receptors in the granulosa cells for them to be able to produce progesterone. And this is interesting because conventional fertility docs often want to see their female patients TSH below 2. I don't know any other conventional doc who's that picky. So they know something. Vitamin C, this can be really helpful. So there's an interesting study. They gave a bunch of patients with luteal phase dysfunction 750 milligrams of vitamin C a day. Progesterone went up. The improvement rate was 53%, and their pregnancy rate went way up. So the other possibility is the vitamin C might have been helping the adrenals in these patients. So I think that's very cool. Adrenal stress, this is a whole conversation, and to some extent, more than one person has talked about it during the week. No one is going to want to do this in your practice. They'll exercise, they'll eat, they'll take your supplements. No one wants to take the time to do the stress management piece, so just keep bringing it up. Transport. This gets back to sex hormone binding globulin. So we've already talked about what raises it and what lowers it, so I'm not going to go through that again. Improving sensitivity, well, if you're trying to deal with estrogen, if you can partially block the estrogen receptors with weaker estrogens. Now, I would not use estriol to start with, but it's easy to use lignans, soy as long as it's organic and non-GMO. Kudzu is actually a really interesting plant, and if you're from the South, you are very familiar with it because it's everywhere. And kudzu, you can get it in Asian food stores as a powder, a white powder, and you can make this really lovely, like a pudding out of it. And not only does it help her estrogen, it makes her really calm. So, prolactin production can also be an issue here. So, chasteberry, Vitex, will help with the prolactin production as well as helping with boosting progesterone. And then if you have to, you can downregulate estrogen receptors using progesterone directly. I said use soy, be very careful. Glyphosate is used on a lot of this, so be very careful about that. Inositol is a really good insulin and FSH signaling sensitizer, so I do use a lot of this for patients with PCOS as well as luteal phase dysfunction. And the study doses are listed on the slide there. So basically, this is a whole list of different things you can use for PCOS, which is both an estrogen dominant and a luteal phase dysfunction situation. The things that are the easiest to use are the inositol because it's a sweet powder. No one minds drinking it. Quercetin and vitamin D, a lot of the resveratrol and berberines are easy to do. Acupuncture is fabulous. And there are some Chinese herbs that work as well. Insulin sensitizers, I believe this has already been covered earlier in the week, cinnamon and chromium. So cinnamon, again, it's food. That's easy. Detoxification. Basically, be careful and avoid exposure to environmental toxins. We've talked about this as well. I'm sure that you guys know about the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen in terms of foods. And this is in your toolkit as well in terms of reducing exposures. Fiber's simple. This is about how do they eat. Now, this does not mean take a fiber supplement. This means eat more vegetables. When it comes to the microbiome, you had a whole day about GI stuff, but again, think about diversity versus any particular strain, and remember fermented foods. That's the easiest way to do it. I give this handout all the time. It's in your toolkit about what is a probiotic and prebiotic foods, because patients will usually know what a probiotic food is, but they've never even heard of prebiotic foods. They think prebiotics are what go in the pill that they take. You need to get food into their diet to protect the cells from the phase 1 estrogen metabolites, and these are basically all of your antioxidants. Green tea, curcumin, vitamin E and A and D and C. These are all food things you can do to help them. Berries have also done they've done a lot of research on using berries to protect against the DNA adducts that are formed from the 4-methoxy groups. Cruciferous vegetables. This is really simple. 500 grams of fresh broccoli a day, 6 days after eating just a standard diet. They improved CYP1A2 by 19%, so you're improving estrogen metabolism, and they improved the 2:16 hydroxy ratio as well. So that's basically a quarter of a head of raw cabbage, or something like that. You're not necessarily going to eat cabbage every day, so here's a list of cruciferous vegetables. It's in your toolkit. Because a lot of times people go, oh, I don't really like that, I don't like that. So just hand them the list. They can pick a few things. Flax, lignans, very helpful. And again, those are easy. You can throw them in a smoothie. You can grind them up and throw them on a salad. These are all different ways to modify. Some of it is food, some of it is supplements. In my practice, I start with food. I save the supplements for last because I don't want my patients to get pill fatigue. You know how it is? You've got this handful of things you're supposed to take every day, and some days you just go, forget it. But they'll eat food. All right. These are the signs of PMS. We're going to go into this a bit more. I have to start here. PMS, as far as I'm concerned, really should be called please more silence. Solitude, self-care, because the average person who has PMS who is prone to this, it's because of the crazy way they live their lives. I can speak from personal experience. I would like to be able to say to everybody, during that second half of your cycle, could you please just slow down? And I actually used to say that to people, and I got these looks like, where do you live? because our society actually makes it really difficult. And what I found over time is that if you just have them do little stuff all month long, it's a little easier. So again, PMS is all about estrogen dominance, progesterone deficiency, and stress, all at the same time. So you have to deal with all of it. These are some pretty simple things that they can go through. B6 is important. It's anti-anxiety, it's anti-inflammatory, it helps glucose regulation. So you can see how that would be helpful on several different parts of the matrix. Some studies have shown it works even better if you add magnesium. And magnesium, here's a typical dose. Some people need a lot more than that. It kind of depends on the GI system and the form of the magnesium that it's in. Most Americans are magnesium deficient. So if in doubt, don't even buy. You don't even have to test for it if you don't want to. Just have them take it. And remind yourself and remind them that when they are stressed, you blow through magnesium the same way you blow through B vitamins. Vitex, this is my favorite plant. My very first plant I ever learned how to use. It has been shown to be superior to placebo when it comes to PMS, comparable to fluoxetine for PMDD. Basically, it keeps you from crying and yelling. I'm serious. It's the thing in my office that their male partners will show up at the office and go, okay, I don't remember the name of it, but it's that thing she takes to keep from yelling at me, and she's running low. So can I get some? I don't want her to run out. All right, let's go through a case study. And the good news is I've actually got plenty of time to do this. All right. 35. This is actually not my case. This is one of my colleagues' cases, but it could be pretty much anybody that we have seen in our office. I'm sure you guys have patients like this. She's 35 years old. She's 5'2", weighs 160 pounds. Obviously overweight. She's angry. She's depressed. She's worried about her weight, and she has this chronic sinusitis. And then in talking to her, it turns out she's also really tired. She's very irritable. She gets migraines. She can't think straight. That's usually the fog brain. Memory problems, no libido. One little comment. When a person says no libido, you have to make sure that you and she are talking the same language. Libido means interest, not function. So make sure when they say, I don't have any libido, your next question is, well, okay, fine, I understand you're not thinking about it, but what happens when you get going? Because if she still is able to orgasm and have fun, then that's kind of a different picture than the person who not only doesn't think about it, but also can't feel anything. Anyway, back to my patient. She's got water retention. Her periods are irregular. She's got bloating and gas and some urge incontinence. Lots of sinusitis and strep as a kid. What does that mean? Lots of antibiotics. You guys are good. Okay. PCOS was diagnosed in college. At one point after college, she was hospitalized for severe depression, was given the diagnosis of bipolar disorder. She's had trouble with her sleep since she was a kid. And then, of course, she had children, and her sleep got worse. She had 2 C-sections for pretty large children. Social history. She's a homemaker. This is her second marriage. It's pretty good, but he drinks a little bit. She's got a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. Her in-laws, her father-in-law was sick for a year. She helped care for him. He has since passed. He was really verbally abusive to her mother-in-law. Her mother-in-law is very needy. She had another family member who died a year before. The previous marriage lasted 4 years. It was, quote, a disaster. And she did teach elementary school before the kids. Now, her diet is like a lot of people. She drinks a lot of caffeine. She drinks a lot of alcohol. So uppers in the morning and, downers at night. And her diet was really kind of a typical standard American crappy diet. Lots of carbs, lots of processed foods. She did read Mark Hyman's Ultra Mind Solution book, and so she decided she would try to change just in the prior month. So she was trying to work around that, but not doing a really great job. In the past, she was on birth control pills, hated them because she gained 20 pounds, and she got migraines and depressed when she was on them. And she's been on every known antidepressant and didn't like any of them, had symptoms on all of them. She has been on Xanax and Ambien for sleep, and lots of antibiotics as a kid, had a couple more antibiotics more recently. Currently, she's on Paxil, stopped it on her own when she ran out, and she's currently using Benadryl at night for sleep. Do you guys have patients who are doing that every night? I do too. I think it's amazing that people use Benadryl every single night to sleep. She has lots of headaches and aches and pains, probably from her sad diet. So she takes a lot of ibuprofen. So what's that doing? Screwing with her liver and her gut. There you go. She's using Maxalt for her migraines. She does take some fish oil, not always, whenever she thinks about it, which is a couple times a week. Takes a multivitamin sometimes, takes some chromium sometimes, and does know about Zyflamin, which is an anti-inflammatory. But she doesn't really think of it all that often, so she still is using the ibuprofen. This is basically her matrix. I'm not going to really go into all the details because it's day 4. You guys know how to do matrices now. So these are the tests that were ordered initially. And while we were waiting on the test results, she was basically told, clean up your diet, no white stuff. And try to eat green as much as possible. My colleague whose patient this is, she told her no caffeine and no alcohol and no dairy. She's very hardcore, my colleague. I would have probably said, cut back on the alcohol, and can you do just 1 cup of coffee a day instead of 3 or 4? Added in some nutrients. She was already taking a multivitamin. They upped that to every day, added the fish oils back in every day, a probiotic. These are all like one of those companies where they put it all in a little packet so she can just grab a packet and go, not have to open up every bottle every day. And then they added in some magnesium. She was actually already doing some exercise, so they gave her a heads up, a high five for that. Now, tried to talk to her about self-care. This didn't go real well because this is a woman with a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And they said, okay, let's do this. No news. She was one of these people that got up in the morning, turned the TV on, always had, CNN on in the car. They told her, just cut it out. If there's anything big that happens in the world, you're going to know about it. 5 minutes in the morning and evening of some quiet reading or prayer. Her partner has an issue with alcohol, so she was encouraged to go to Al-Anon. So these were pretty basic, easy things for her to do. So she comes back in 4 weeks. Oh, I forgot to say, her initial MSQ was 110. Now, you guys are new to using MSQs. 110 is a big number, okay? Run one on yourself tonight. I hope you're nowhere close to that. She comes back 4 weeks later. She's already down to an MSQ of 44. And we really haven't done anything. We didn't have any labs back yet. So, we haven't really intervened all that much. She's also lost 7 pounds because she actually is managing to eat a little less. These are her labs. One thing I'm going to point out. In conventional medicine, I was taught you get a fasting blood sugar as part of your comprehensive metabolic panel, and only if there is an abnormality would you ever consider getting an A1C. Draw it anyway. Also, you might want to go ahead and get a fasting insulin anyway, even if their fasting glucose is normal, because, for instance, her fasting glucose is 93. Her insulin is 9.4. I don't want to see it over 10. 9.4 is pretty high, actually, because I definitely don't want it over 10. That A1C is supposed to be 5.2, not 52. Don't have a heart attack. That's a typo. It's not 52. But now stop and think a minute. Does an A1C of 5.2 make sense with a fasting of 93? No, we know that she was eating garbage 3 months ago. So it isn't like she was eating really well and then got a little worse right before the lab test. This woman's got hypoglycemia. And she doesn't even recognize it because she was so used to feeling bad, she didn't even notice it. So consider getting in the habit of checking all 3 of those tests because you may not notice that if you wait until her glucose goes up. You'll notice that her triglycerides are close to 300. Her HDL is only 34, because that's not going to change in 1 month of eating well. It's going to take a little longer than that. Her vitamin D is only 26. I want to see it 50 to 80. If I can get it over 60, I'm even happier. A stool test was done for antibodies. She reacted to a bunch of stuff. There were also some hormone testing done. Her testosterone was low. Her estradiol, let me go back. Her estradiol was low normal. Her progesterone was low. And her testosterone was low. So pretty much everything was off. And here is her cortisol pattern. So tell me how she's going to feel. When's she going to feel good and when's she going to feel bad, just based on that? How's she feel first thing in the morning? She feels okay first thing in the morning. How does she feel late morning? Yeah, it's when she was grabbing her second cup of coffee. In the afternoon, she's actually a little revved up. She didn't realize it. She just thought it was, well, it's a busy time of day and I'm getting dinner ready. Do you think she's sleeping through the night? Because she's kind of low at midnight, which means she could very well be bouncing up in the middle of the night. Wouldn't it be nice if we had the ability to get that 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning salivary dose? You know, the only problem is that nobody knows what the normal is. Because if you're asleep, how are you going to give some? You know, if you're normal and you're asleep at 2 o'clock, you can't get a level done. Anyway, it's a conversation I used to have with a friend of mine who used to work for a specialty lab. Okay, talk to her about a gluten-free and a dairy-free diet because she came back with a lot of different things in her stool test. She was started on progesterone because my colleague does that before she does chaseberry. They gave her DHEA. Now, I'm going to make a quick little comment about treating with DHEA directly. I essentially never use oral DHEA. It is too much trouble because you have to follow the breakdown products, because if you've got someone who's already estrogen dominant and you give her oral DHEA, her body may take it to the liver and convert it to estrogen. I don't want to have to follow that. So you can get sublingual sprays. So if you're going to do that, and if you're going to do it in a divided dose, breakfast and lunch, because if you do it too late in the day, it might get her too revved up and she won't be able to sleep. They added vitamin D, they added vitamin C. Talked to her again about self-care because she still wasn't doing it. 3 months later, she's back. Her MSQ is down to 25. So we're only, 4 months out from meeting her, and she's gone from 110 to 25. She's dropped 20 pounds. She's had 3 regular periods, which she wasn't doing before. And she's not yelling at kids so much. Her sinus drainage is gone, and she hadn't had migraines for a month. So the point here is you can affect and balance hormone levels without giving hormones. All right? That's the single most important thing you need to remember from the whole day. Now, we're going to go through some clinical pearls and some summary slides. And I'm going to actually probably finish a few minutes early so you'll have some extra Q&A. Everything is connected to everything when it comes to hormones. So try to understand all these relationships before you change anything. And as Joel said this morning, don't change too many things at once, because if you change 1 or 2 things, 2 or 3 things over here may just straighten themselves out. And if you try to fix everything at the same time, I don't think I ever actually sent anybody out of the office crying the way he did, but they probably just looked at me funny and didn't do half of it. But anyway, you don't really need to hit all things at the same time. Start as far upstream as you possibly can, and the downstream stuff will take care of itself. You will have to explain that to patients. They're going to say, but why aren't you giving me estrogen? Or why aren't you giving me progesterone? And so you'll have to say, just be patient. It's all related. Go through as much of this as you think is appropriate with your patients without making them get glassy-eyed. Form a hypothesis of the imbalance and pattern. Test it. Don't just guess. Even when the presentation is hormonal, you have to remember the other nodes. This is slow medicine. It takes a couple of cycles. You need to explain that to her. She's already frustrated. You have to say, yeah, okay, I know you want to feel better tomorrow. Give me a couple of months. Okay, my list of favorite foods to modify estrogen metabolism. This is where I go rather than give people supplements. Do I sometimes give them supplements? Like if I have a patient who travels a lot for work and she's, maybe she's going to be able to eat well and maybe not, I have her keep some of the supplements around, like some DIM or some IC3, but she only gets to take those with her on trips and only gets to use them if she can't find any cruciferous vegetables. And like, how hard is it to find broccoli? I don't care where you're traveling. Green tea, one thing you can do if you want to get green tea into their system and they really can't do the caffeine, you can get decaffeinated green tea extracts that they can just put in water or put in a smoothie or whatever. These are all, we've talked about how they modify estrogen metabolism. So for those patients who have poor metabolism of their estrogen is the underlying problem, add these in as well. The calcium D-glucarate, I tend to only use that if she says to me that she's constipated or I have testing to prove it. If I have a patient who can't afford to do testing, I will sometimes do a trial of it for a couple of cycles. The problem is, I always say to them, okay, now we're doing 3 or 4 different things, and so when you're better, I don't know which thing works. So you might have to keep taking the calcium D-glucarate unless we can test for it. Other herbs and nutrient support for PMS. Didn't really get a chance to go into all of this. The chasteberry is lovely. Dong quai is a Chinese herb that will actually, I think of it primarily as being something that will improve estrogen, but it also has other activities, so it does work with PMS, even though it sounds a little backwards. Black cohosh is not for hot flashes. I know you all think that. It's for doom and gloom that comes with menopause and the doom and gloom that comes with PMS. Lemon balm, if you don't know it, is a lovely plant. It is easy to grow. It makes a lovely tea. The great thing about asking a patient to drink tea is that the other rule is she doesn't get to multitask while she does it. She has to actually sit down with it. So you get quiet and tea at the same time. Burdock is going to help her liver do detoxification. St. John's wort we've already discussed today, and then milk thistle also helps with detoxification pathways in the liver. Use the matrix first. Work on diet, minimize xenoestrogen exposure, support gut health. This is all stuff we've talked about. And that is the end. So you get an extra almost 8 minutes of Q&A.